This program is brought to you by the Media Liberty Alliance Foundation in cooperation with OBBM Network TV, bringing citizen-led, creative local media to the forefront of local communities to foster a greater understanding of constitutional liberty and appreciation of what makes us truly free, starting with you and me.
The Zach Rateliff Show is brought to you by Mortgage Financial in Texarkana, Exceed Health Clinic on Mullen Drive in Texarkana, Elmwood Custom Goods, and Church on the Rock, Texarkana. That's churchontherock.org.
The Zach Rateliff Show is brought to you by Mortgage Financial in Texarkana, Elmwood Custom Goods, and Church on the Rock, Texarkana. That's churchontherock.org.
Okay, now try one more count down 3, 2, 1, and then do it all.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1. The Zach Rateliff Show is brought to you by Mortgage Financial in Texarkana, Elmwood Custom Goods, and Church on the Rock, Texarkana. That's churchontherock.org.
Hello, and welcome to the Zach Rateliff Show. I'm Zach. This is my friend Nancy.
Hi.
What's up, Nancy? How are you?
Oh, I'm dandy. How are you?
Good. What's this, the third time on the show, maybe?
Is it third or fourth?
Third or fourth?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not including the radio, but including the radio, probably fourth or fifth.
Oh, yeah. If you count the radio. Yeah. I didn't think about that. Yeah. It's been a while.
Well, anyway, yeah, you were here today in Bowie County, talking about data centers and all the things and how it's tied in and giving testimony at the commissioner's court here in town. Why don't you, or here in the county, not in town, why don't you kind of give us a wrap up? How'd this start? What's going on? And then, because, I'm still on the fence about data centers, as you know, which is funny, us being friends and you being where you are and me being like, I don't know.
It's actually okay. Most people think that I am anti-data center, and that's actually not the case. Believe it or not, they just think that I am because I hold them to a accountability, really.
Right.
Because I believe that if you're going to do any business, that asking them to be able to prove the safety and reliability that's a natural request. And I can be a stickler about what that means in some ways.
Right.
But for example, here in Bowie County, you're being inundated with solar, wind, batteries, and, well, the wind less so, but solar and batteries, now data centers, right? And the reality is Bowie County doesn't have a fire marshal. And so this is something that I said today that I just feel so strongly about. It doesn't matter where you go in America. They're going to tell you progress is going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. So if you can't stop progress, what do you do?
Right.
Then you make sure that it's done safely and with the people that you're meant to protect in mind. So the purpose
and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And the purpose of government, like the whole purpose of government wasn't to control us. It was for us to have parameters to enforce our constitutional rights, to serve and protect us. So asking our elected officials to show us where our health, safety, and welfare were taken into an account for a big corporate industry is not unreasonable, especially when they're trying to put it in our backyard.
Right.
There's two sides of the property line. You and I have had this conversation so many times. There's property rights. I'm all for property rights. I would never tell someone what to do on their land. Do you want to sell your land? That's fine. I have a right to question the corporate entity that comes in after you, that you sold it to make sure that they're not impacting my property rights, my way of life, my health, right?
Right.
My health, safety, and welfare, right? And so in a location like Bowie County, when you don't have anybody actually verifying that, and that becomes a question, right? So you have negligence of duty. But what becomes even more concerning is when there are known impacts, when like I provided them a federal lawsuit, for example, that was it's a New York and California case, but there's a battery storage system that contaminated a water district.
Right.
And in that 37 or whatever it is page packet or docket, it actually goes and explains, what the impacts were, what was damaged, how it was damaged. And the biggest concern is the forever chemicals. Batteries, when they go into runaway, they put out PFAS, which are forever chemicals, which are super hard, if not impossible to clean up, especially in your water, right?
Now, let me just, for those, because I don't know, I only know enough to be dangerous. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
I don't know the full story, I guess. But I'm willing to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
Are we guaranteed that all data centers have battery backups in them?
No, and that's part of what you're trying to find out, right? Like,
Right.
you don't know what they have. So, like, for example, majority will, because think of it like your house. If you lose power in your house, like, it's an inconvenience, but you typically want a backup generator to get through whatever you lost power for.
Right. I usually just ride it out and light a candle.
Well, yeah, but like, for example, my house, I lost power for 5.5 days when a Derico came through last year.
What's an Derico?
It's straight line winds, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not a tornado, it's not a hurricane, it's straight line winds.
Okay.
And I had one come through where I live, and I live in the middle of the woods, so the trees took down a lot of poles, and the
Right.
cities and everybody else got a lot of attention before coming out to where I live. I didn't have power for 5.5 days. So we ended up getting a backup generator.
Yeah.
It was June. Thank God it was not July or August, but it was June. And it was hot still. And so, like, we had the backup generator. And that's just for me, a family home. So, like, that's a smaller one, right?
Right.
Well, whenever you have something that relies on power, that if the power crashes, the entire system's trash,
Right.
you're going to need a backup generator.
You need a plan.
Exactly. And so, like, even though you can provide your power, if the power goes out for XYZ reason, you want to make sure you have a backup battery.
Right.
And that's where you're likely going to see a battery storage come in, because it's the Band-Aid. It's make sure that their system, if they lose power, they have something to keep it from losing all of that $1 billion investment.
Right.
$100 billion investment. So,
Okay.
yeah. So even though it's not guaranteed, the probability is significantly high. And then, like,
Right.
with people like Google, they typically prefer to have a solar battery combo.
Right.
And even then, like, when you go to the Permian Basin, if you watch any, like, if you're, just for those out there, I'm a big geek, so I like to pay attention to what's going on in our legislation. And so, like, if you pay attention to any of the hearings that were recently held in Austin, they acknowledged in the Permian Basin, they have a significance of solar and wind. They're not trying to outbuild the gas. They're trying to build more solar and wind.
Right.
And that all those things require battery Band-Aids at that point. You don't have enough transition or power of transition without a growth in the 765 transmission lines and batteries to make sure the switch is maintainable.
Right.
So even though it's not likely, we currently have about 1,100 batteries still in queue to go active in Texas.
Okay.
Alone. And
Golly, that's a lot.
it is. Yeah, especially when you consider that on average, you have about 150,000 pounds of lithium per site.
And then that's back to your, what is it, 4 grams of lithium or whatever is in
Yeah. So it's a AA battery has about 0.4 grams of lithium.
0.4 grams, yeah.
A EV vehicle has 16 pounds of lithium, and then a battery storage site has about 150,000 pounds.
I mean, and then when you say runaway, that's when those fires take off and there's nothing you can do to put them out. So I understand that that's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just want to add real quick right here. So they have the fire suppression systems, right? So in that lawsuit that I provided your local officials here, it says that the fire suppression system, which is like a sprinkler system essentially,
Right.
operated for 30 hours in this particular case, releasing 2.2 million gallons of water.
Total or an hour?
Total for 30 hours,
Okay.
which is a lot of water.
Yeah.
It's a lot of water for a sprinkler system.
Right. Yeah.
For 30 hours that is now contaminated with electrolytes and PFAS.
Right.
And where
That's
does
got
that
to go somewhere.
Exactly.
Right?
So, and that's where the concern comes in when you go back to that point, as you're not just looking at just the plumes and emissions, like the ground saturation as well.
Right. And then anyone on that aquifer, if there was, somebody with a well within, they happen to hit the same aquifer, if there's any creek runoff that goes into any livestock ponds or tanks around. I mean, which is a realistic threat, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's actually what this lawsuit was, the ground was permeated. So basically what happened is they acknowledged in the lawsuit that The current practice is let it burn, like you said. They spray the surrounding containers to try to maintain temperature.
Right, just to keep the heat off of them.
And then as the plumes are going up, they're coming back down into that saturated soil that has the water from where they were doing that. Right. And then what's happening is it's going into the ground, which then over time gets into the aquifer, which is where they caught it in their wells. They found it in like 4 or 6 wells.
Okay.
But because it's a water district, they maintain them more consistently. So they're watching for these levels, which is how they caught it.
Right.
Which is like, goes back to your point. Does the tank and the farmer really monitor that consistently?
Right.
And then their cows drink it, and then what?
You know, and here's my deal. Once again, I don't know enough to know what I don't know. So that's what makes me dangerous on this. But, one, like you said, we have to find out if this data center or any of these data centers coming are even going to have battery backup. Maybe they're going to have generation backup, and they're going to be able to multiple generators that all phase in and phase out, and then there's so that's a real possibility, right? So then that takes that away. I'm not saying it's gone, but it's at least knowing exactly what's coming here, which is where I can be with you. Is let's know what we're getting, and then let's have the legislation or the statutes or whatever we need in order to make sure that all our the citizens and the livestock and that is all taken care of.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I approach it.
You know, there's a lot of people right now that are frustrated with our governor at any given time for whatever reason. And right now it's the current audit directive that he put out there.
Right.
But to me, how can you set a legislative parameter if you don't even know what you're legislating? If you don't know what you're looking at, what are the systems? What are the power draw? What is the water? How can you set a limit on something that you don't even know what limit to begin looking at?
Right.
And so when I'm looking at the governor's audit, I see it as an opportunity. Even here in Bowie, y'all are on SWEPCO. You're not on ERCOT or PUC, which is the Energy Reliability Council.
Or Bowie Cast. A lot of us are on Bowie Cast. So.
Yeah, which is still not the, ERCOT, the 90%. There are 6 other grids in Texas that are not on the ERCOT grid. Right. So, but this still matters to you because it goes back to your point of, what do we not know?
Right.
What do we not know? Like if the governor and the state themselves are asking these questions and they don't know, how can we assume a commissioner court can know that answer? And
the other thing, you're exactly right. And they don't. Now, the other side of it that I take is, if done correctly, and we have the right rules and, I guess running boards or whatever beside it, this could be really good for our community from a financial standpoint, from a tax standpoint. But if that negative outweighs that, that's where it's a problem. So we just need that information to say, okay, is it worth, am I making sense on that?
Yeah, no. And here's the thing. Do you give your realtor company a tax break? Do you give the new restaurant a tax break? Do you give the new metal builder a tax break? No. So why should they get a tax break? If they want to build, they should have to pay the taxes, which would help the community, but it would help the residents of the community as well.
Right.
So I think that that's another thing that's significant whenever the governor's asking, who are your investors? What grants, incentives, subsidies, breaks are you getting? Because when you're looking at it, there's a lot of money to be gained there. But I don't know if you know this, and this is actually very interesting. We haven't talked about this yet, but did you know that last week, I think it was, JP Morgan and the Rothschilds actually had such a hit to their Wall Street over data centers that they're requiring their hedge fund investors to put up further collateral.
Saw that.
Yeah, so like that's significant. When you have the Rothschilds going, hold up, we have to consider that. Like they don't do that. That should tell you right now that there should be a red flag somewhere that the Rothschilds are actually concerned about their money, especially when they're already getting, some places are giving them 70, 80% tax abatements that they may never see the fruition of that. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of questions that are not answered when it comes to the data centers. And this is why I didn't touch it for so long.
Right.
Because I couldn't find the data. But the fact that the state is asking for the data too should tell you alone that the data is not there.
Yeah, it's not. It hasn't been flushed out very well. And just to be clear, I don't think, as far as I've been made aware, maybe I should say, the Bowie County has not offered any tax abatements as far as my understanding goes.
Not
and even
to
with
the
people,
data,
yeah, and
to
even
the
with
solar.
now solar, that's a whole different thing. But as far as the data centers, to people I was talking about at the county commissioner's court this morning, they were like, "No, we're not aware that any tax." Of course, I can do this. I can play both sides on this, because if you're going to possibly be making $5 million a year and paying to your school property tax, and that school district has $1 million a year budget, and then you say, well, we're going to give you a 50% tax abatement, so now you're only getting $2.5 million a year. It's still 1.5 times your annual school budget, so it's still a win. So, but I think that's all hypothetical, because that's not an issue here. That's not one that our county has offered, as far as I know.
Yeah, but even then, like, does that mean I don't have to pay school taxes anymore?
It could.
And that would be a positive, right?
Right. Yeah.
But we don't know the answer to that yet. Right now,
that would be something to be discussed.
Exactly. And that's kind of one of those things, like going back to what you were originally asking, like if everything shows like we're safe, we're safe, our welfare is in check, and, we're not going to have any health issues, then there's not going to be a nuisance aspect, our light. And, like, for example, Senator Kolkhorst asked, like, going back to the 20 that were tested and 6 failed, 5 failed because they couldn't do jobs.
Right.
Instead of having these big industrial lights on 24/7 at night that impact our stars, could you not just hire people to patrol the border?
Right.
And do security guards? There are other things we should be considering. Like if you're going to put them in quote unquote rural neighborhoods, which don't exist,
no such thing as a rural neighborhood.
No, if you're in rural Texas, there's no neighborhood.
I mean, I guess technically I live outside the city limits and I still live in a neighborhood. So, but I mean, it's as suburban as you get. I mean, it's not a rural, but I mean,
No.
And just with our location here in Texas, we're considered rural, but a rural neighborhood is.
No.
Yeah.
Where I live, what they're building next to me, like your next neighbor is a quarter mile to a mile.
Yeah.
Like we have lots of acreage out there. And so like, does that mean that because I don't have a neighborhood that my land can be impacted? Like there's a lot of loopholes there.
That was the verbiage that I picked up on instantly. I'm like, rural neighborhood. This doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Makes me wonder if Abbott's never lived in the country.
Well,
honestly.
I don't know.
I know Trump hasn't, honestly.
No, and I don't expect that he would. I mean, why would you, right?
But JD Vance has. And knowing that JD has, and this kind of goes back to my point, I kind of found it comical that, Trump called New York dumb for opposing data centers, but he called Texas mistaken. So at least he knew better, right?
Right.
Don't call us dumb.
Yeah. Well, don't come after your own voters.
Yeah.
He knows New York's not going to vote for him.
Exactly. And then
not that we are either. He's term limited. So
yeah, and like you and I've had this conversation. Like the dollar bill is depreciated so much over time. It's basically worth nothing, but we have to live off of it, right?
Yeah.
But my land in 20 years will hold the same value to me that it did today.
Yeah.
And it did to
more.
Than it did to my husband's parents and to his husband's or to her parents, So like it's generational land, and generational land like that holds value that no dollar can carry.
Right.
And actually I think Luke Bryan wrote a whole song about it actually, Buy Dirt, I think that's what it was. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. When you're looking at it, if you're going to do it right. I shouldn't know you're there.
That's right. And then my other side of this whole argument, and then we'll kind of get into how you feel like the meeting went, but my other side to this whole argument is here in this area, especially, we have 2 paper mills with 20 minutes either side of town, 25. You can see, you just don't know where it is, but you can see across the interstate from here an aluminum plant.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Cooper Tire rubber facility. We have Red River Army Depot, which, is one of 4 of those institutions in the country.
Mm-hmm.
We have industry here already.
Mm-hmm.
Are we applying the same thought process to, because with what everybody's saying, you wouldn't allow a Cooper Tire to be built right now if you were worried about light pollution and water and what about the heat that it puts? Yeah, that's part of industry. And so that's where I get real weird about it. I'm like, hold on. We can't stop everything.
Mm-mm.
but we can manage it to a way that it's good for look, nobody, we're never going to make everybody happy.
No.
But however, I think what you're doing is good. And I appreciate you coming in, just saying, here are, and all you're asking for, and don't let me put words in your mouth. So tell me if it's wrong, is saying, hey, get a fire marshal, make sure the Texas codes and laws that we have are enforced, make sure that all of these things are done correctly. And if these companies can accomplish these things, then they pay. That's as simple as it gets, right? Am I off on that?
No, actually, we've stated that out of my county multiple times. You know, my county has a restraining order against a battery site for their batteries themselves. We have a moratorium that's been in effect since February with no recourse. We're holding
Which
strong.
I was proud to be there when that got accepted.
I was proud to have you there.
Yeah.
But in that, like, we've known every step of the way. It has been very well communicated between myself, my commissioner court, our county attorney, our fire marshal. It has been very well understood. All we can do is make sure they're following the law.
Right.
Full stop. Like, it was never about stopping them. Like, they were never going to go away unless they choose to. All we can do is make sure they're following the law. That's it.
And that's what I just want people to take away from this is make sure the environmental laws are followed, make sure our U.S. security laws, make sure there's no Chinese technology in there or whatever Russian technology, whatever technologies are on the banned technology lists. Let's make sure those aren't in there. Let's make sure it's acting as it's supposed to act. Other than that, you know, we're getting outside of our bounds, I think. Now, I understand that there are concerns over power usage, water usage when it comes to data centers, the amount of noise that they put out, the amount of light that they put out. However, all of these can be mitigated to a point, just like, which I heard a lady ask you about it today, actually, you know, about the power generation. That's what they're building now, are the generators and how that works. And yeah, that is part of it, and that is going to make some noise. But if you don't want a pull on your current utilities, you have to get that power from somewhere. So at least they're saying, hey, we'll build it. And then here we have a shortage of available water already, not because of our water. We have abundant water in our area. Anybody that tells you anything else is not right. We need someone to buy our water from our water system here so that we can keep control of it. It is actually the way that my understanding that Riverbend's working right now. So, and if I'm wrong, somebody can tell me, and I'm sure they will. But we need another treatment plant so that we can move west, which let's take some of these taxes we'll get from this and put those towards building that facility. Let's take some of these taxes that we'll get from this and put it towards having the right fire and emergency equipment to handle this. But once again, if you don't have a fire marshal to make sure all these laws are followed, then you don't know what you need.
Exactly. And that's very bottom line. Like, if you're going to have progress, you should have checks and balance in that, like anything else.
Right.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why do you think we are competing with China?
You know, on the numbers, we're not. We're blowing them out of the wall.
It's quantity. The answer is not quantity.
Okay.
It's quality.
Yeah.
Do you want to know why?
Yeah, please.
So it's actually very simple in nature, and everybody knows the answer, but they never actually think about it. So even with the data centers we're seeing here,
right,
you cannot compete with China if you're using their software. Okay.
Oh, right.
So China has multiple contracts with open source software. The open source software with Meta, Google, TikTok, for example, these are all open source software. So in that, Americans have been teaching the artificial intelligence for Chinese software for a while now, for decades almost. There's congressional documents that go back to proving that Meta has the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party contracts with China specifically. And then even then, if you go back to, what was it, last year, early this year, Kash Patel put out and Hegseth put out that Microsoft was being hacked by the Chinese Communist Party through their open source software. Is what it was.
Isn't that interesting?
So how do you fix it, right? It's not quantity. You can't fix quality with quantity.
Right.
You fix the quality issue. So what you do is you take the congressional documents, the FBI investigation, the Department of Defense documents that say that the CCP is using open source software through Google, Meta, TikTok, Microsoft. You shut off their access on the American side. You replace it with American-made software, and you teach their data.
Right.
If you want to compete with China, you have to remove China from the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just makes sense, doesn't it?
It does.
And when they're so integrated into everything we do, that it's terrifying. And we, I don't think we probably don't know exactly how integrated they are.
Well, like, for example, why do we have Samsung and Google phones? Let's not make Patriot Mobile a big thing in Texas and in America in general, right? We have the providers. How do we boost them up a level to make American made the primary and stop having China in everything?
Well, when we went on the global, this is going to turn into a globalist rant. When we went for the, foreign labor gets cheaper goods, and that's what we got. Mm-hmm. And to our own detriment at this point.
Yes.
Because, you can pay more, but why would I pay more if I don't have to?
It's so funny. In a congressional hearing, the national labs, there's a committee. It's called the Select Committee on the CCP. So it's Select Committee on Chinese Communist Party is what they are. You can go to their website. They exist. They're amazing. They have the national labs, DOD, national security, all in there, right? And in that, one of the questions that the Congress members asked one of the experts was, what can America do to stop the infiltration, to stop the failures? And the answer was so simple: don't buy the cheapest.
Yeah. I mean, it's that easy. And it's a lot easier to say than it is to do.
It is, especially when everything's so complicated and expensive. And again, the dollar's depreciated.
Yeah.
So like we're living in an economy that, like, back in the 80s and 90s, you had a singular income, people could thrive. And now we're in 2026 and like you can't have a single income household, especially if you have children, because then you just struggle.
Right.
So like you have to either like not pay a bill, not get groceries, figure that out. Right. So everything is so expensive these days. We know this. We keep saying this, but we never ask, well, why is it so expensive and how can we change it? And the reality is yes, China made it simple. I mean, who doesn't want to go on Shein and get the nice new clothes, or Temu and get the cool little gadget for 60 cents? I have only once. And even then I was like, what am I thinking? And immediately like got thousands of emails and knew it was dumb.
Yeah, right.
So like, this was a while back, but lessons learned, we'll say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that if we're going to fix it, whenever people say something is haphazard, well, China's in everything, you in that statement are acknowledging my enemy is surrounded me. And what does China like to play? Chinese checkers.
Right. That's right. Well, okay. So let's bring it back here. Mm-hmm. I know that you spoke to this group down at Dixie Diner a few weeks ago with Danny Proctor, and then after that I had him on the show. And then they brought you back today and to speak to the county commissioners. Kind of what was the purpose of that, and then how did the talk go, and how do we feel like all that went, and where are we going forward from there?
Yeah, so my thing is I show up with action steps. I think we
not just to complain.
No, I think at this point we know what the problems are.
Yeah.
We know what the fears, the concerns, and the questions are. But what can we do to get the answer to those questions? So my goal, the reason I was brought in today, because I have actually implemented, working with others, ways to do that, to get those answers. And one of the things like I really wanted to emphasize today is when you are an elected official, you swear an oath to that position to serve and protect the people. So you serve them and you protect their health, safety, and welfare. That is your duty. Right. And that's why there's government codes specifically on those issues, right? And so whenever you swear that oath, you have to be able to answer questions of, am I safe? If you can't answer that, you need to get them. Right. And the reality is when you're looking here at the commissioner court, you don't have a fire marshal. So who do you have telling you that you're safe? Because you have an active battery right up the street off this highway. And do we? Yeah, it's right next to the solar site.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, where the paper mill is off the highway there. I'm assuming it's paper mill. So like you have the solar, and then you can kind of see a battery back right here, and then you see the logs that are being sprayed.
Oh yeah, no, that's not
that. What is that?
That's not a paper mill. I don't know what that mill is, but it's not a.
I assumed it was paper mill because
that's not even one. That's not even one of the big ones I'm talking about.
Well, that one was interesting to pass by, but I'm pretty sure like I saw a battery kind of in the back, like right corner.
Okay.
But it was just like a couple units. It wasn't like a whole field of it, right? But even then, like, who's going out to investigate and make sure that these are meeting state codes, right? So, like, you have multiple projects coming in. Like, you have solar, battery, and data. But even then, going back to your point of the other manufacturers, like, you can't just go at these three. You'd have to go at all of them. And I don't think that it's unreasonable to say, are you meeting state codes, right?
I mean, that's why they're there.
Exactly. And so very minimum, hire a fire marshal. And not only that, but what can you do a step further? So we know that the governor has the audit. Then you take what the fire marshal finds, or a county or civil engineer who investigates and says, well, they provided these documents. Well, if the governor's trying to get answers as to, what's being done and the water use, the electricity use, blah, 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 what better way to put that than on the docket number specifically assigned for the audit to be able to say, this is what's going on in Texarkana.
Right.
Your commissioner court has the ability to hire someone that it would basically pay for itself, because the permits and inspections end up paying for themselves. So you can take on a position that pays for itself, which they've already been talking about either hiring or contracting someone. So that's not a stretch to go ahead and say, do it. And then also take that information and provide it to the governor of Texas. Provide it to him if he's asking. Help him, right? And you can do that in a way to slow it down. So one of the things I recommended to your commissioner court was to do a moratorium. Mm-hmm. So Austin County recently did a battery storage data center.
Where is Austin County?
South of us.
Okay, hold on. Let me look at my talking.
Yeah. So, it's not Austin, Texas, for the record. It's Austin County. And they did one that was and this is something else I provided to your commissioners. It's a battery data center combined moratorium. And in that, it provides how you can go about pausing it and using a fire marshal and county engineer to verify that state codes are being met. Where is it?
Belleville is the county seat of Austin. Other incorporated cities of Austin County and towns in that county include Sealy, which is the largest, Wallace, San Felipe, Industry, and then I can't say that one, South Frederick, I don't know. Anyway, so
yeah, I know the judge.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, he came to one of the events we held at the Capitol in his full fire gear. It was very professional fire marshal gear. But bottom line, they could do a moratorium using that. And then that was actually passed before the governor's audit. So he could take the Austin County moratorium. They could add in the governor's audit to do a reasonable, timely pause to support the governor in his audit to get understanding of what they don't know.
Yeah. What I saw you handing stuff out to all of our commissioners. What were you handing them?
So there were 4 documents in there. It's a pretty good packet.
Yeah, it was.
And I went. So one of them was the fire standards and codes.
Right.
So I just was, again, emphasizing their duty when you take an oath to protect and serve, right? But also giving them the codes that allow them this ability to hire the fire marshal, how the fire marshal can pay for itself, and also just more on just the general fire marshal aspect for enforcing state law, right? The second one was the necessity of it. So whenever you're talking about, for example, battery storage systems, the second one was the big, thick docket from the federal lawsuit for the battery storage contamination of the water. I went through all those documents and highlighted the key points. Like I talked about the 2.2 million gallons of water, the contaminants found, the water wells, all the things that they would need to understand. This is why you check the health and safety, right? And actually, I found it very fascinating that they said that in that document, they went on to say that it's a duty to ensure citizen health and safety was even listed in the lawsuit itself. And then the third document I provided was an op-ed that I wrote for for West Bowie Post here in Bowie County, and that was me explaining
the Tribune.
No, it was called West Bowie Post, I think.
Okay. Just western part of the county, I guess.
It was one of the papers they asked me to put together. I will look it up. But I wrote that up explaining how, again, the moratorium that we just covered, it gives more detail of how they could go about it and why that would be functional.
Right.
And then the final piece was the moratorium itself. It was the exact copy of Austin County's moratorium. So it was 13 pages of all their full documents with their whereases and everything. And that way they could see how it worked. And, again, one of the things your judge said was, we don't want to get sued. Well, Austin County hasn't been sued and Zandt County hasn't been sued because we went through the process.
Right.
If you do the due diligence and the duty, you can support why the need, right? You don't have to get sued. And if you just live in constant fear of being sued, well, you can be sued from both sides.
Well, that's the game plan, right? I mean, for a lot of people, threat of lawsuit will equal inaction.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, so you gave them a lot. We've talked about a lot. You had 10 minutes, but you kind of got through about 8.5 minutes. What all questions did they have for you?
They didn't ask a single question, not one.
Not one of them.
No, they didn't even thank me for coming either. Just nothing.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
It seems wild to me. And even if it would have been, because, I stayed for the rest of the meeting and a large number of y'all went out, and I'm sure you were fielding questions just from attendees down in the lobby. And, but it seems to me, because I talked to other people after the whole thing was over, always a good time to see the sheriff. He was there taking care of sheriff and business, and some of their stuff. So I was talking to people as I do. But I was surprised that no one even caught you afterwards. Like, hey, let me clarify. Let me dig a little deeper, but it didn't seem to happen.
No. Mm-mm.
Here's what I'm interested in. If over the next month,
mm-hmm.
I would be interested to know if any of them contact you, like, okay, what is this about?
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
I will tell you that, I only had 10 minutes to speak. There was no timer, so I couldn't see how much time I had left, and I didn't want to run out of time, so I was trying to get to the point.
Next time, let me know, and I'll just be in the back yelling, 5 minutes.
90 seconds. Well, I always want to get to a point. So what I'm going to do, there were several things that I wanted to state that I didn't. Like, for example, one of the ladies that spoke in public commentary before me was a concern about school evacuation. If you have a fire marshal, you can get a site-specific emergency plan in place.
Right.
And
that handles that. Exactly.
It would answer that question right there, right? That's a question that a citizen asked in public commentary. You could hire a fire marshal and get that answer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things required in Zandt County. That's one of the things, we want a site-specific plume study. We want to know where that's going so we can plan our emergency plan, right? So I'm going to do a follow-up email to all 5 of them and, just again, give them some resources, additional information. And I make all of this public, by the way. I don't ever hide any of this. I will give this to all the people here in Bowie County because I'm helping you. And so at that time, it'll be interesting to see if any respond to me, any reach out at all, or even reach out to the contacts I give them. And I will tell you that the contacts will tell me if they were reached out to.
Right. And I would bet that, and we don't have to say who, but one of them had to invite you here and put you on the, so, that person at least cared enough to hear what you had to say.
There were 2 for sure that were welcoming to the idea of me coming to speak, but
right.
None of them asked questions.
And maybe they just felt, I'm not trying to be disparaging towards them so much as I was really surprised that there were no questions.
Yeah.
Even as I watched, I thought, I know a little bit about all this, and I have so many questions, but I didn't figure they'd like me yelling them from the back. Hey, Nancy. And I knew we'd be here. Okay, so let's play the what if game.
Okay.
So what if we get through the next month, Bowie County hasn't heard anything, nothing's changed. So what's next? It's just kind of okay, they heard us, but now it's time to go.
Well, there's 3 levels to this. There's negligence, which means that you don't do your duty at all. You don't know that you need to do the duty. You're not aware of what you should be looking at, right? Mm-hmm. So negligence, right? Because you didn't try to find out.
We can't have that because they were made very aware today.
Which goes into willful negligence at this point. When you're aware that there is a potential hazard, threat, or danger, and you still do nothing, you have what's called willful negligence, which now goes into misdemeanor. Because it's an actual crime. It's an actual crime.
If a DA or somebody chooses to.
Right. And that's going a step further. For example, say willful negligence would go into the fact that they start clearing that land and you decided your home was for sale before they started clearing that land and you can't sell it now and you're now impacted trying to sell your land. There's willful negligence because now there's someone that's potentially harmed, right? Then there's called malfeasance that comes after this. Malfeasance comes in when your property value has depreciated, your school is harmed, someone's health, safety, welfare, whatever is damaged.
Do we have any studies on what it does to property values?
Yes, actually.
Is it negative?
It's very negative. Like even in Zandt County, where the proposed one was, where we don't even have batteries yet, it dropped in some cases $70,000 in value.
Really?
Yeah.
An acre? Like 70,000 over what? Like,
I think theirs was 2 acres.
Okay, and it dropped 70,000, so $35,000 an acre.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be significant.
Yeah, it might have been a little less than 2 acres, but I think it was 2. But there were several properties that were impacted just at the thought of a battery storage.
You know, when I hear about these things, here's my thought though. Like, I deer hunt. I deer hunt over in Arkansas in Fulton. In Fulton, we have what you call the Turk Power Plant, which is the most modern coal burning power plant in America. It has everything that you would need. It is the cleanest coal burning power plant in existence in this country, and it's right here. But I can sit on my deer stand, you know, a few miles away, and I can definitely see the tower, the top of the tower flashing, especially if I'm in a clear cut or something. And you can see the glow and all that, but has it negatively affected the deer and the turkeys and the bears? It doesn't seem to have.
Yeah.
You know, so I just these are the thoughts I have when I'm weighing all this. Like, okay, this is a big scary subject.
Yeah.
But we have to be willing to talk about it because here's my worry. Sometimes everybody gets so emotional over all this.
Fear.
Yeah, that we can't process the facts on both sides. Right? I want to do this. I got to have it. And, you know, because if somebody came up to me and like, Zach, for your however many acres, I'm going to give you this much money. Sign that check, baby. You know, and I think I'll do that. And then I even hear it said quite often, well, but there was an NDA and we didn't know what was going there. Well, how many times have your neighbors sold their house and you got to pick who the neighbor was? I mean, I sell real estate professionally, and never are you made aware of who's moving beside you?
No. And so like, that's the thing too. Like, okay, this goes back to a separate issue, but like there's a potential commercial Muslim boys school going into my county. Right.
Right.
But like, if it was proposed that it was like a family, like I'd be less inclined to really pay attention. Right.
Right.
Like, you know, a residential situation.
Right.
But when it comes to commercial, how many times in history have we learned that commercial large-scale projects have endangered, harmed, or done irreparable things to the area?
I mean, some, yeah, definitely.
A lot, actually. Matter of fact, where I live in Zandt County, Texas, was part of the big oil boom. They made movies about it. That water table still can't be used.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, like, there are still residual effects from even 100 years ago that are still being learned from the lessons. Like, my thing is if you're going to learn a lesson, learn it
once.
Exactly. And so like with the oil and gas industry, how many lessons have we learned, right? Yeah. Enough, you know, with the sour gas explosions, you know, all the things, S2, all the things, right? So in all that, we're now having to learn these lessons with solar and wind, and now the batteries, and now we're throwing in a data center. It's a lot at one time. So like if it was a residential situation, someone's buying a home, I may not like my I don't like all my neighbors, if we're being honest.
Oh, we talked about that.
Yeah. So like I don't like all my neighbors, but you know what? They stay on their land. Oh, you're very blessed. Yeah. But they stay on their land, I stay on my land, and we coexist and we just don't talk to each other. But if you're like, and that's fine, right? Like you do what you need to do. But like, then when you have a large scale commercial project coming in and you can't say you're not going to impact my land, and we can't like, you know, just completely ignore each other. Right. Well, then that's a problem for me. And so like that we're talking about two different things at that point, in my opinion.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to cover all that. I know you were here. I know you got to get out of here and head back to Zandt County, but I appreciate you stopping in again and just kind of keeping us in the loop.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Zach.
Yeah, all right. All right, everybody, we're going to get out of here. I hope God blesses each and every one of you today.